First seeing this and thought straight away, holy shit, that is the bullet. It matches the exit wound. It also matches the shirt puffing up and the angle of the entry and exit.
Picture this: a packed auditorium, phones raised, screens glowing, families shoulder to shoulder, a crowd gathered to hear a speaker they had come to see. The air hums with expectation, with the ordinary noise of an event about to begin. Then a single shot. Chaos. A man collapses on stage. That man was Charlie Kirk. Within hours, a name was everywhere: 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. Arrested. Photographs in handcuffs filling headlines. Prosecutors saying they intend to seek the death penalty. On the surface, the case seemed to fit a simple narrative: a rooftop sniper, a distant, calculated strike, a suspect whose online anger provided motive. But beneath that surface, new details have emerged: medical notes, witness statements, sound and video clips, details that raise serious questions about where the fatal shot actually came from and who truly pulled the trigger. September 10, 2025. Utah Valley University. Just after 12:20 in the afternoon, Charlie Kirk took the stage to speak about faith, freedom, and the future. Thousands were present, live streams were running, phones recorded the event from multiple angles. Then a single shot shattered the moment. Security rushed the stage. People dove for cover. Parents shielded their children. In the hours that followed, law enforcement launched a manhunt. By the next day, authorities announced they had a suspect: Tyler Robinson, a resident of Washington, Utah. Police told reporters they had found DNA on a rifle's trigger, surveillance footage placing Robinson near the relevant building, and, they said, a handwritten note hidden under his computer keyboard describing a plan. Court filings allege text messages to a partner expressing frustration with Charlie Kirk's political views. Those pieces, taken together, painted a damning picture: motive, opportunity, and a weapon supposedly linked to the crime. But some of the most consequential pieces of evidence, the medical details and witness testimony from inside the auditorium, tell a different story. Surgical staff who treated Charlie Kirk in his final hours have described a wound pattern that does not fit a long-range, elevated shot. According to sources familiar with the medical imaging, the bullet that struck Kirk did not pass through his body. There was no exit wound. The round was recovered lodged deep in the tissues of his neck. The path described in the imaging, as relayed to reporters and independent experts, appears to show a forward trajectory, a path entering from behind and traveling forward, rather than a downward path from above. To understand why that matters, consider basic ballistics and wound dynamics. A high-powered rifle fired from a significant distance typically carries enough energy to create an entry wound and an exit wound, especially when striking soft tissue. When a projectile is fired from an elevated position at a downward angle, the expected trajectory and impact behavior usually differ from what was reported in these medical descriptions. Independent ballistics experts who reviewed the medical accounts told us that finding a bullet lodged and a path suggesting forward travel would be difficult to reconcile with a rooftop sniper using the weapon police say they recovered, absent some complicating factors such as a major ricochet or the use of a different firearm. Those are not idle technicalities. They are the kind of forensic details that can reshape an entire case. If the lodged bullet and the forward trajectory are accurate, they point to a shooter who was much closer to the stage, possibly on the ground level behind or near the crowd, rather than positioned high on a rooftop several buildings away. That fact alone demands scrutiny. It requires independent review of the medical imaging and a full accounting of the ballistic testing. It also raises the possibility, a chilling possibility, that the person arrested and charged in the immediate aftermath may have been misidentified, or worse, that someone could have been framed. Eyewitness testimony adds another layer of concern. Multiple attendees described the sound of the shot as unnervingly close. Not distant, not muffled, but sharp and immediate. Some people said the blast made their ears ring. Several witnesses seated near the front reported seeing movement behind the stage in the split second before the shot rang out. In the age of smartphones, dozens of videos captured the scene from multiple angles. In many of those clips, the crowd ducks within a fraction of a second after the sound, an almost reflexive motion that, to ordinary eyes, suggests the origin of the blast was nearby. Audio forensics is a well-established field. When multiple devices record the same event from different locations, those recordings can be synchronized and analyzed to estimate the origin of a sound. With enough properly documented clips, forensic analysts can triangulate a sound source with a surprising degree of precision. Yet, remarkably, law enforcement has not publicly released an official audio triangulation report in this case. That silence leaves a gap between what people in the room experienced and the narrative presented to the public. If authorities have conducted such analyses internally and found results that confirm the rooftop theory, releasing them would help shore up public confidence. If they have not, or if their findings are ambiguous, the absence of this analysis becomes a central point of controversy. Alongside the medical and audio questions sits the digital trail that investigators say led them to Tyler Robinson. Court filings allege that Robinson sent texts to a partner expressing anger with Charlie Kirk's politics, writing that he was done with the hate and suggesting that some voices shouldn't be allowed to speak without consequence. Police also say they found a handwritten note beneath Robinson's keyboard reading, "I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it." On paper, motive and intent look evident. In the public mind, motive can become proof when combined with a timely arrest and a dramatic narrative. But motive is not the same as guilt. People write angry messages all the time without acting on them. Private venting can be taken out of context. Notes can be fabricated or placed where they will be found. Digital records can be altered. Defense attorneys have already suggested that someone with knowledge of Robinson's online activity could have created a false trail, using his words and digital footprint to make him look like the obvious suspect. Such a scenario is not a mere hypothetical. It is the precise concern any defense attorney would raise when a conviction is sought in a case with such high stakes. The speed of the arrest and the way evidence was presented to the public also deserve examination. When high-profile crimes occur, there is enormous pressure on law enforcement to act quickly and visibly. Rapid apprehension can reassure a shaken community and show the public that authorities are in control. But speed carries risks. A fast-moving investigation can develop tunnel vision. Investigators fixate on a suspect who seems to fit the facts and discount discrepant information. Once a narrative forms in the public sphere, flash images of an arrest, a suspect's photograph, confident statements by officials, it becomes harder for alternate hypotheses to get the same attention. That is why transparency about chain of custody and the handling of physical and digital evidence matters. How was the rifle recovered on the rooftop processed? Who had access to it between recovery and testing? Were DNA samples collected and tested in a manner that preserves their integrity? What are the timestamps and metadata on the surveillance footage police say places Robinson near the scene? Independent scrutiny of those details can either confirm the official account or reveal lapses that undermine confidence in the prosecution's theory. There are, however, constructive steps that could be taken, steps that would illuminate the truth rather than obscure it. First, the full, unredacted medical imaging and surgical reports should be made available to independent forensic pathologists with appropriate protections for privacy. A full review could verify the reported entry path and clarify whether the wound dynamics are consistent with a distant, elevated shot or with a shot fired nearby. Second, the raw audio files from the many phone videos captured that day should be collected, authenticated, and made available for independent audio triangulation. Third, ballistic testing and weapon matching must be transparent. The bullet recovered should be compared, in standard forensic fashion, to the rifle recovered on the rooftop, with test firing, microscopic comparison, and documentation of any anomalies like ricochet marks. Fourth, raw surveillance footage with complete metadata should be provided to independent reviewers so that timestamps, camera angles, and locations can be verified. Finally, the chain of custody for each critical piece of evidence should be documented and accessible for defense review. Any one of those reviews could vindicate the official narrative. If the medical imaging ultimately supports a distant, downward trajectory consistent with the rooftop position, and if audio triangulation confirms a distant source, and if ballistics tie the recovered rifle conclusively to the projectile that killed Charlie Kirk, then the case against Tyler Robinson will be strengthened. But if those same independent reviews point in the opposite direction, the implications are profound. The person currently facing life or death charges may have been misidentified, and the real shooter may still be free. At the center of all of this is human suffering. A family has lost a husband, a father, a son. There are rooms in which people gather to remember Charlie Kirk, candlelight vigils on chilly nights, faces wet with tears. That grief is immediate and cannot be reduced to a forensic debate. And yet the criminal justice system is designed to hold two truths at once: to honor and address the pain of victims and their families, and to ensure that the person accused faces a process that is thorough, transparent, and fair. The courtroom will be the place where evidence is tested and where arguments are made about what the facts mean. Prosecutors argue that the totality of the evidence, physical, digital, and circumstantial, points to a single responsible person. Defense teams argue that gaps, inconsistencies, and omissions undermine confidence in that conclusion. In a case where the state announces its intention to seek the death penalty, the standard for certainty is necessarily high. The life of an accused person and the integrity of the justice system itself depend on rigorous proof. As this story unfolds, there are a number of specific developments to watch for. Will the medical examiner or treating physicians release full imaging and detailed pathology reports? Will prosecutors or independent labs publish a comprehensive ballistic analysis linking the recovered bullet to the rooftop rifle? Will law enforcement provide an audio triangulation analysis of raw phone recordings, or will independent experts obtain the raw files and perform their own synchronization? Will surveillance footage and metadata be made available for independent verification of the timeline? The answers to these questions will determine whether the official rooftop theory stands or whether investigators will need to consider alternative scenarios. One alternative scenario is a ricochet. If the bullet had struck a surface before entering the victim, a ricochet could alter its trajectory and energy in ways that might explain an atypical wounding pattern. Ricochets leave physical traces, however, and a careful forensic examination of the scene and recovered fragments should reveal their presence. The presence or absence of ricochet evidence matters. Another possibility is that a different weapon was used altogether, a weapon not recovered at the rooftop location. That possibility points back to questions about access, motive, and the possibility of deliberate attempts to misdirect investigators. Even more troubling is the theory of a frame. If someone wanted to pin the killing on an emotionally vulnerable and publicly recognized suspect, they might use the suspect's online rhetoric and private notes to create a narrative of motive and intent. That scenario would require access, someone who knew about the accused online presence, someone who could plant physical evidence or manipulate digital records. Preventing or detecting such a scheme is the work of careful investigators and attentive defense lawyers. It requires transparency in evidence handling, rigorous authentication of digital materials, and willingness by authorities to entertain and test alternative hypotheses rather than rushing to publicly affirm a single story. Throughout this reporting, the media has played a significant role. Speed and the appetite for gripping visuals can push a narrative before all facts are known. An arrest image circulates widely, a suspect's face becomes linked in the public mind with guilt. That reality complicates the pursuit of truth. If the wrong person has been arrested in a case this explosive, correcting the public record is difficult. That is why methodical, transparent disclosure of the underlying forensic evidence matters so much, not only for the integrity of the legal process, but for the public's understanding. This is also a moment that reveals the power and limits of citizen-sourced evidence. The dozens of phone videos taken by people in the auditorium are invaluable. They create a mosaic of perspectives that, when combined with proper forensic work, can triangulate facts the way no single camera can. If you were in the room and captured audio or video, your file could be crucial. If you have footage that shows movement behind the stage or records the precise timing of reaction by the crowd, it could be one of the pieces that clarifies whether the blast came from inside the auditorium or from afar. For professionals in the fields of audio forensics, ballistics, and medical pathology who may be listening, your expertise is also needed. Independent review by qualified experts can either corroborate the official account or highlight inconsistencies that require further investigation. In high-stakes cases, independent peer review of key forensic findings is not an indulgence. It is a safeguard against error. We must also remember that the justice system is not a popularity contest. People may have strong emotional responses to public figures and to political rhetoric. Those emotions can cloud judgment. The responsibility of investigators, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and judges is to rise above partisan or emotional tides and focus on verifiable fact. That principle should guide every step taken in this investigation and any subsequent trial. As hearings continue, the defense will press for discovery, the full medical imaging, the raw audio recordings, the ballistic reports, and any surveillance metadata. The public should expect a rigorous, adversarial process in which each side tests the other's claims. That contest will be messy and uncomfortable, and it should be. The adversarial process exists precisely to surface truth through challenge and cross-examination. Until the files are released and independent analysts have their say, the central question will remain unresolved. Did the fatal shot come from a rooftop many yards away, fired by a rifle whose trigger bore DNA allegedly linking it to Tyler Robinson? Or did it come from a position much closer to the stage, consistent with the wound path described by surgical staff and the moments recorded by audience members? If the latter is true, then investigators must ask how the rooftop rifle was linked to the crime, who had access to it, and whether other actors were involved. No matter the outcome, the stakes are enormous. A man's life hangs in the balance. A family grieves a public loss. A nation watches as questions about political violence, media framing, and investigative rigor play out in real time. The proper response is not to leap to conclusions but to demand transparency and to push for the independent verification of contested facts. If you have information relevant to this case, whether you were in the auditorium, whether you have video or audio files, or whether you have professional expertise that can assist, consider coming forward through secure, verified channels. Citizen footage and expert analysis have solved mysteries before. They can help ensure that justice in this case is based on the most complete and accurate facts possible. For now, we will follow every filing, every hearing, and every forensic disclosure. We will seek out the medical imaging, the audio analyses, the ballistic test results, and the surveillance metadata. We will present those findings honestly and clearly, and we will let the experts weigh in. If the evidence confirms the rooftop theory, we will report that. If it contradicts it, we will report that too. The public deserves nothing less than a full accounting. This story is not a soundbite. It is a complex weave of medicine, audio, video, physical evidence, digital traces, and human testimony. It is also a measure of how our institutions respond when the cost of error is so high. A fair process must be thorough, transparent, and humble in the face of uncertainty. That is the only way to honor both the memory of a life lost and the rights of the person accused. The questions raised are simple to state and hard to resolve. Where did the shot originate, and who truly pulled the trigger? The answers will come from files, from tests, and from the patient work of independent experts. Until then, the correct posture is one of careful skepticism and insistence on evidence. Do not confuse the emotional power of a headline with the rigor of a proven forensic finding. We will keep watching. We will keep asking for the files and the tests. We will keep listening to the experts and to the witnesses. We will keep posting updates as new information becomes available. Not because controversy draws viewers, but because the difference between a conviction and an error in a case like this is the difference between life and death. Thank you for listening. If you were at the event and you have material that could help answer these questions, please consider submitting it through secure channels. If you are an expert and you can help review key evidence, please make yourself available. The pursuit of truth is a collective enterprise, and in moments like this, every verified detail matters.